The Holy Gospel according to St. Matthew. Before I read this, I was asked a very good question when I was walking in. Generally, I come in from the back because my mind is geared up to lead a congregation, a diverse group of people. I know we'd like to think that we're all of one mind, but I can promise you we are not. I get the letters, so I know we're not on the same page a lot. But I can tell you this, that this is one of the best questions I've been asked. What's a parable? Well, let me tell you what it's not. It's not intended to be interpreted literally, ever. Parables are never to be interpreted literally. They are and can feel like real-life stories, but they are fiction. They are subversive stories. There is an attempt through allegory to somehow help us reverse traditional thinking or the system that currently existed. That's the use of a parable in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So again, I'll say it's not literally to be interpreted. I will tell you that it's not a true story, and it somewhat necessarily has to be subversive to kind of get behind our preconceived notions, sometimes our defensive structures, to reverse the thinking that we have, the traditional thinking or the systemic thinking. For example, today, take this text. You have it in front of you. I'm looking at it right now. While the king is like God, in some sense, remember, he is not the same as God. This king in this text would make me run in the other direction. This king is like God in some ways, but is not to be understood as our God. Likewise, the son in the story is not Jesus. The slaves that went out to invite everyone, they were not the prophets. And the violent response of the king is not the fall of Jerusalem. Allegory interpretation isn't wrong, but it must be understood with its limitations. Does that help? Okay, good. All right. Once more, Jesus spoke to them in a parable. The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who gave a wedding banquet for his son. He sent his slaves to call those who had been invited to the wedding banquet, but they would not come. Again, he sent other slaves, saying, "Tell those who have been invited, 'Look, I have prepared my dinner. My oxen and my fat calves have been slaughtered, and everything is ready. Come to the wedding banquet.' But they made light of it, and they went away, one to his farm, another to his business, while the rest seized his slaves, mistreated them, and killed them. The king was enraged. He sent his troops, destroyed those murderers, and burned their city. Then he said to his slaves, 'The wedding is ready, but those invited were not worthy. Go therefore into the main streets and invite everyone you find to the wedding banquet.' Those slaves went out into the streets and gathered all whom they found, both good and bad, so the wedding hall was filled with guests. But when the king came in to see the guests, he noticed a man there who was not wearing a wedding robe. And he said to him, 'Friend, how did you get in here without a wedding robe?' And he was speechless. Then the king said to the attendants, 'Bind him hand and foot and throw him into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are called, but few are chosen.'" We should be saying, "Hallelujah, thanks be to God for that marvelous..." Seriously? Boy, do I want to follow that guy. The only thing that he might have right is enough is enough. But beyond that, wow. So what are we to glean from this particular text? It makes me want to just simply go back over to Philippians and preach that one. Because this one, yeah. The gospel of the Lord. Please be seated. So I went to some of my sources. The first thing I did when I was looking at this, I went to my Greek New Testament and I tried to read it to the best of my ability and see where's the trick word. You know me well enough to know that I look for that one word that makes all the difference. Couldn't find it. I went to a couple trusted resources, two of my commentaries that I like very, very much. Historically, I went back to the Isaiah passage. I used Keil and Delitzsch as a reference. You're probably not going to find that in the Lutheran seminary. You're going to find that in more of our conservative evangelical schools. It is a very, very serious academic tool. I like it a lot. It's old, it's heavy, it smells like it has something to be gleaned from it. And I got nothing. I went to a couple others, including Luther's series and Luther's writing on the text. And Luther was probably the most confusing for me, so I thought, wow, I'm on my own. And then an email came through, of course. You know, God sends emails. And this one was from Diana Butler Bass. You've heard me speak of her before. If you tend to be a progressive, you're probably going to love her. If you tend to be one that believes in literal interpretation of Scripture, you're not going to like her. But I got to tell you, where did these people go to school? Where did Tim Keller go to school? Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary. I'm very proud of the institution that I went to school. And with colleagues like these, I'm grateful to be in a room and be the absolute dumbest one in the room. Because when I'm around them and their writings, I'm a nobody compared to them. And yet we had the same education and the same tools. Theology was important back then. We didn't talk about social issues back then. That was a mistake. But now, where, oh, where are the theologians? Where are the ones that will take what we've been told and take it apart, exegete it, read it properly and in context, and then say, the word of the Lord? Many are called, but few are chosen. Bind them hand and foot and throw them into the outer darkness where there'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. I would rather exit if we're to talk about exclusion and destruction. I don't really want to talk about that, especially after the events that we're seeing in the Middle East. I don't want to talk about it. Do you? Do you really want to hear about that? Paul's words in Philippians 4. Beloved, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is pleasing, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence and if there is anything worthy of praise, think on those things. Gratitude. It's been a long time since the book was written, Seeing with New Eyes. It's been, I think, close to 14 years. Some of you have read it. I would recommend it to all of you, Seeing with New Eyes. Because in this text, it seems like we should be thinking of that. Think about gratitude. What are the benefits of living a life of gratitude? Last week, I talked about this, right? Do you remember when I said people who are happy tend to be generous? They're grateful, so they're generous. And people who are generous tend to be happy. So if we're talking about gratitude in the text today, then the benefits are well-being and physical health, community. We need community, don't we? We need to feel together as community. We need to set aside whatever keeps us apart and come together. We see that in our small groups. We see it at Come to the Table. We see it with the teams working with each other. We even see it when some of our spouses in the kitchen yell at some of the male spouses. And if you ask some of the men who are working in the kitchen when their wives are present in the kitchen and you hear them snip at them, it's kind of fun. Roz, have you ever said anything to Brian in a corrective way in that kitchen? Bonnie, have you ever said anything to Rick? Or Becky, did you ever say anything to Scott back there? Andy, Susan never said anything corrective to you back in that kitchen, right? And Phyllis, always quiet with Jim. You really got to go there. It's better entertainment than you'll ever find at the State Theater. It's fun, but it's real. See, the thing is, it's real. It's honest. It's authentic. That's real life. Too often we want Pollyannish. We want that which is delusional. We want the fairy tale. We want the nice to cover up reality that we must deal with. And in this particular text, there's a reality here. An offer was made, an invitation. The table was prepared. The fatted calves were killed. Calves, plural. Think about the wealth of this guy. Everything. This is 5-star plus. And they said, they didn't want it. No wonder he was upset. When his absolute best was being offered in honor of his son, in celebration of his wedding banquet. Trust me, the wedding that is understood should be understood in the New Testament. Translation, just a quick excursus. Just a quick. Weddings are not the same as our marriage in the New Testament. Our marriage is go to the courthouse, get a license. Anybody now can do a wedding. We don't even have that reserved for people. Now it's anybody can preside and sign off. Just go online and get your ticket in 15 minutes. Weddings back then were the observance of a covenant being made. It's not a contract. It's not have your prenup. It's a covenantal relationship. So when people say, Pastor Bob, what does the New Testament say about marriage? I have to ask you, are you talking about today? If you want me to compare it to that, it doesn't exist. But if you want to talk about what God says in Scripture 2,000 years ago, then you're talking about a covenant. That's entirely different. Entirely different. Psalm 23, sometimes called the Psalm of Lament. But according to Diana Butler Bass, bad things in Psalm 23 are really bad. You know the words, 23rd Psalm? The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He leads me beside still waters. He restoreth my soul. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. In the presence of my enemies. This is the 23rd Psalm. People run to that psalm all the time. Well, can I have that at my funeral? Sure. Do you know what you're talking about? Do you know what you've just asked? To come into your service remembering this person's life. Yea, though I walk through. Think about the exhaustion, evil, the valley of death, surrounded by enemies. This is the song of King David, running for his life, fleeing those who wish to kill him. Man, that is way past Kathy Krause's 9-year-old class in Sunday school. But that's what happens as you mature people. You have Kathy teach us when they're 9, and then we grow you up. We mature you into a deeper understanding of what this text really is. That's what I love so much about my colleagues that went to school where I had a chance to go to school. I shall fear no evil. David sees with new eyes, seeing with new eyes. I will fear no evil, for you are with me. I have nothing to fear because, God, you are with me. Instead of being pursued by those with evil intent, David says, surely goodness and mercy will follow me. Instead of being pursued by those with evil intent, he was being pursued by goodness and mercy. Then you get Paul's letter to the church at Philippi. Randy, those two names, they're really tough. And if you go on your phones, don't do it right now, you can have, how do you pronounce this? And there are multiple pronunciations for E and S, those two ladies. Paul is so upset, and yet this is how he writes it. He cleans it up. I mean, he's upset with these two women. They're arguing with each other. These are church people. Becky and Shannon. Yep, here we go. Not really, not really. I urge the two of you to be of the same mind in the Lord. Now, I don't know if I would say that if I had two on my staff doing that. I'd probably say, knock it off. Get your act together. Quit it. But he asks for reconciliation. And he urges the whole community to lend a hand in making that happen. You see, the gospel lesson refers directly and indirectly, explicitly and implicitly, to the wolves amongst the sheep. And in the midst of it, you have imposters. In the church, you have posers. You have those who are acting like, with their smiles and their behavior. And they end up messing up the church. The gospel reflects on that, Philippians reflects on that, and the 23rd Psalm. So the lectionary put it together people did a really great job today. Now remember where Paul was when he was writing to these two women to get their act together. Paul was in jail, and our bulletin says, with an uncertain future. But Paul wasn't worried about the future. Paul was worried about doing today's work. Paul reminds them to not tear at each other and tear each other to shreds. That's what churches do. Not us. That's those other people. That's what churches do. They fight over the silliest things. But we wanted green Jell-O, not red Jell-O. But there's a greater enemy at the door, according to this. So how are we to live? We're to live gratefully. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say rejoice. Let your gentleness be known to everyone. The Lord is near. Do not worry about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. I have had with me for 35 plus years, I have a folder upstairs in the attic. We have an attic above our garage it's really a room, but it's where my file cabinets are. And I decided to do something the other day. I kind of had enough of my first 35 years of ministry. I'm preparing for the next 35. So 5 of the 8 drawers, legal-sized drawers, large cabinets, I took out, and they're in the shredding bin. They're gone. I've saved maybe a box that big of my first 35 years of ministry. The rest, it's gone. I don't want it. I'm not a saver. I like clean. I like fresh starts. And I believe that transformation happens when we allow ourselves to be purged. Not saying it's easy. I read the letters. I read things before I threw them away. And I read heartbreaking letters. I read tearjerker letters. I read letters that brought smiles back. I read letters that talked about retreats and experiences in Africa and experiences in Jamaica and experiences all over the place with people for whom I've served with, alongside of, and loved. The same here. As I looked at some of the things that Becky had, and as I looked at what we're preparing for in the annual report, and I look around the room right now, look at the people in this room and the work that's being accomplished. Look at the work that's being accomplished. Set your eyes right now. Set your eyes right now. Don't look back over your shoulder. Get your eyes forward and keep moving. Listen to the counsel of Paul. Whatever is good, whatever is just, whatever is holy, whatever is pure, whatever that is, keep your eyes on that. Keep your eyes on that and work together for good. I feel the need to write, and I haven't for a very long time. And I want to write about you differently this time than the first that never got published. Maybe this is why. Because maybe your story isn't the story yet. But what will your next story be? Will it be found in the files, or will it be seen by your actions? Will it be in some annual report, or will it be known by the hearts of the people of this community and beyond? I mean, we've got little evangelists all over the place here that invite people to church, but you'd be surprised who they are. Not our long-tenured members. Well, maybe one. Chris Schlegel is probably the best evangelist I've ever seen. You can't get gas without him going inside and saying, hey, you ought to come to church. I've been with him. But Alina, thank you for bringing friends. Thank you for bringing people with you. The one guy looks a little, he reminds me of a person when we were at the homecoming game last week. I think I saw him in a football uniform. Both of them, actually? No. What sport are you in? Baseball. Football, baseball. You can't bring a cross-country runner? All right. Seriously? Anyway, whatever is good, whatever is pure, whatever is righteous, let's do that. Let's do it together. And I will write. And I will write. Because I think I'm going to I think it's time